Welcome to the Dragon's Den. My name is Leo Drake and thank you for spending part of your day with me. Please consider subscribing as it is free and I wouldn't harm a fly, I promise. If you enjoy the video, click the like button and ring the notification bell to be notified when I post a new video. In this video, we are reviewing the Psycho films with Anthony Perkins. We will not be covering the 1998 remake for obvious reasons. I will be discussing the movie during this video, so consider this your one and only spoiler warning. There are 4 movies in this list, so let's get to it. Psycho from 1960 was directed by my favourite ever director, Alfred Hitchcock, and based on the book by Robert Bloch, who loosely based his novel on the real-life killer Ed Gein. Psycho was written in 1959. Only 1 year later, the movie came out, showing that they believed it would work well on the big screen. Marion Crane is in a long-distance relationship with Sam Loomis, whose name appears in Halloween as an inspiration and also in the film Scream, showing that Psycho has a huge influence on the horror genre. Marion wishes to marry Sam, but her dreams are shattered by Sam's debts. When Mr. Cassidy gives Marion's boss $40,000 in cash, Marion is asked to deposit the money at the bank rather than leaving it in the office over the weekend. In a moment of spontaneous recklessness, Marion steals the money and drives to meet Sam. She falls asleep on the highway during the night and is awoken by a police officer. Marion swaps cars, but causes the officer to become suspicious. Tired and caught in a storm, Marion pulls in at the Bates Motel and is greeted by Norman, played by Anthony Perkins, who offers her a dinner up at the house. The motel has struggled ever since a new highway was built. We learn that Norman is a little strange and lonely. His interests include taxidermy, reading, and looking after both the motel and his mother.
We're all in our private traps, clamped in them, and none of us can ever get out. I was born in mine. I don't mind it anymore. Oh, I do, but I say I don't.
Marion begins thinking about returning home and replacing the missing money before anyone notices it is gone. Norman spies on Marion through a hole in the wall, and we get the infamous shower scene. Is there a more famous scene in the entire history of cinema? Let me know in the comments. Norma Bates stabs Marion to death, and Norman covers up the murder to protect his unhinged mother by driving Marion's car with her body and the money into a nearby swamp. Shortly thereafter, Marion's sister Lila visits Sam at work searching for Marion. She's not alone in her search, as private investigator Arbogast has been hired by the insurance company to find the stolen money. Arbogast tracks Marion to the Bates Motel. He informs Sam and Lila before seeking a conversation with the mysterious Norma Bates up at the old house. Despite Norman's refusal, Arbogast enters the house and is stabbed on the staircase by Norma Bates. Sam visits the Bates Motel when they don't hear back from Arbogast, and he only sees an old woman in the window. Lila and Sam go to Sheriff Chambers, who reveals Norman's mother died over 10 years ago and he lives alone. It was a tragic story. Both Norman's mother and her lover committed suicide by taking strychnine poisoning. The sheriff visits Norman but finds nothing amiss. Sam and Lila visit the motel as customers and feel there is something suspicious. Norman has hidden his mother in the basement. Sam tries to keep Norman talking while Lila searches the house. Norman strikes Sam and follows Lila up to the house. Lila discovers the skeleton of Norma Bates and is saved by Sam. I sometimes struggle and deliberate over these movie rankings, but not with Psycho. This movie is masterfully directed, with an amazing score from Bernard Herrmann that you could not imagine the film without. The script is magnificent with great characters, and the ending is absolutely spellbinding. A black and white masterpiece. I give Psycho 5 out of 5 stars. Now, Psycho sequels generally have a negative reputation, and Alfred Hitchcock was never a fan of sequels, so they were all made after his passing. Let's discuss the Psycho sequels and whether they are as bad as people say, or whether they might just be worth another look. Psycho 2 from 1983 was directed by Richard Franklin. 22 years later, Norman Bates is released from a mental institution despite the protestations of Lila Loomis, who is once again played by Vera Miles. Norman returns home and memories of his mother return. Norman gets a job as a cook's assistant at a nearby diner. Mary waitresses at the diner and breaks up with her boyfriend, so she needs a place to stay. Norman fires Toomey, who has been managing the motel in his absence, and he invites Mary to stay with him up at the house. Norman quits his new job to run the motel, and Mary continues to stay with him. Norman peeps through a hole in the wall to watch Mary, and hears his mother's voice in his head. A pair of teenagers break into the Bates cellar to smoke and make out before the boy is stabbed and the girl runs away. Dr. Raymond and Sheriff Hunt are keeping an eye on the newly released Norman. They inspect the cellar, but it is clean, and Mary covers for Norman. Lila Loomis arrives in Fairvale. She confronts Mary, who is her daughter, and the pair of them had a plan to get Norman recommitted, though Mary is beginning to have second thoughts. Dr. Raymond visits Norman and tells him Mary is Lila's daughter. Lila has been trying to push Norman over the edge, and Mary refuses to help her anymore. The authorities excavate Norma Bates' grave to ensure she is dead, and the sheriff drains the swamp, discovering Toomey and his car. Mary tells Norman that they should run away because of the police investigation, but Norman does not want to leave. Dr. Raymond surprises Mary, who accidentally stabs him. Norman attacks Mary, who discovers her mother Lila buried in the coal pile. Mary goes to kill Norman, but the police arrive and shoot her. The evidence of Lila and Mary's collusion make them appear guilty and Norman the victim. Although this is perhaps a little bit of a stretch considering his past actions, the movie does a good job of telling the story. In fact, the sequel has a very solid script. While it retraces some of the original film steps, it also attempts to add to them. At the end, Mrs. Spall from the diner reveals she was Norma Bates' sister and claims to be Norman's real mother. With Norman's obsession over his mother, this does not go down well, and we do not see Miss Spall again. This is a good sequel with a surprisingly coherent narrative that really ramps up to a strong conclusion. Therefore, I give Psycho 2 3.5 out of 5 stars. Psycho 3 was made in 1986. Anthony Perkins, who plays the role of Norman Bates in all 4 films, takes a turn at directing this movie. Maureen questions her faith in a convent, leading to an accident, forcing Maureen to leave and hitchhike with the untrustworthy Dwayne Duke, who tries to come on to Maureen before leaving her on the side of the road during a storm. Dwayne stops at the Bates Motel and is hired by Norman. Maureen reminds Norman of Marion, even having the same initials on her suitcase. A reporter seeking a story on Norman Bates and asking questions about the missing Miss Spall talks to Dwayne at a local bar. Norman continues his voyeuristic habits, spying on Maureen. Dwayne brings back a girl who Norman's mother does not approve of, and a local football game brings a rare crowd of customers, leading to another girl being killed. The sheriff begins investigating the missing girl. Maureen initially offers Norman an alibi. Dwayne desecrates Norman's mother, and we can't have that, so he ends up at the bottom of the swamp. The reporter reveals that Miss Spall was Norma's sister, but she was in love with Norman's father and killed him before abducting Norman. She was put in an asylum, though later released. While this film has a few nods to the original, the script is not as strong, and the only real addition is shoehorned in at the end. It feels more like a horror slasher than a thriller. and the premise begins to feel a little stale. Psycho 3 gets 3 out of 5 stars. Psycho 4, The Beginning from 1990, is directed by Mick Garris. I want to start off with my challenge of enjoying this film, and it comes down to the strange inconsistencies this movie has with the rest of the franchise. Which is even weirder when you consider that Joseph Stefano, who wrote the original Psycho screenplay, returns here. The film acts as a prequel and a finale to Norman Bates' story, but I really had a hard time appreciating the movie because I was trying to understand why they made so many changes to the established story. If you can take this film on its own merit, I think you might well enjoy it, as it does have an interesting perspective. A radio show is having a discussion around the crime of matricide, and Norman calls in to speak with the host. Olivia Hussey plays Norma Bates, and we see the abusive dynamic that affects Norman as a teenager, growing up alone with his oppressive mother. The familiar story plays out unfamiliarly, and we witness Norman poison his mother and her lover before stealing the body from the funeral parlour. Norman is now married, but is mentally shook when he finds out that his wife is pregnant. He is naturally concerned the child will turn out like him and thinks about killing his wife. We hear and relive his thoughts during the radio show conversation and the flashbacks. Norman invites his wife up to the old house, but he cannot go through with murder and ends up burning it down. Being a big fan of this franchise, especially the first film, I could not really enjoy this movie because of the many changes that were made to the continuity. Olivia Hussey is an attractive central woman who is far from the old lady portrayed in earlier installments. The reason for Norman's father's death is rewritten, and even some of the timelines are altered. However, I do think that the reason for Norman's concerns and the idea of playing it out over a radio show call-in is actually pretty good. The film was not really for me, but I will still give Psycho 4, The Beginning, 3 out of 5 stars.
And they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Thank you for watching. Let me know what you want me to review here on the channel in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like and share it. I'm looking to post a new video every Monday, so be sure to come back for that and click the link on screen to watch another of my videos. Until next time, hoorah!